Greetings, mortals. It is I, Luther, here with another episode of Tapes of the Lost. Tonight we pull back the velvet curtain on the lights of fame and find nothing but shadows. These are not stories of fading stars. These are stories of brilliance, extinguished, of genius, consumed by darkness. Welcome to Death in the Spotlight.
Chris Farley was the loudest person in any room, and yet by the end, no one could hear him screaming for help. He was the soul of 90s comedy, explosive, sweaty, over the top, and endlessly lovable. From Tommy Boy to SNL, he embodied chaos wrapped in charm. But off camera, that same chaos was eating him alive. Farley's addiction was no secret. He spoke about it, joked about it, tried to conquer it. Rehab became routine, intervention a revolving door, and despite his boyish innocence on screen, behind the scenes, he was spiraling. In December 1997, it all came to a head. Farley had spent 4 days binging alcohol, cocaine, morphine, and more. Friends said he was manic, paranoid, emotionally unstable. Witnesses described him falling over in bars, incoherent and desperate. And then there's the photo. Taken the night before his death, it's one of the most disturbing celebrity images ever captured. Chris, bloated and red-faced, arms around a woman he had paid to keep him company, his eyes glassy, his smile forced. He looks already gone. On the morning of December 18th, his brother John found him in his Chicago apartment. Chris was lying face down in the hallway, wearing only pajama bottoms. His nose was bleeding, vomit on the floor. The autopsy would reveal a deadly mix of cocaine and morphine, the same speedball that killed Belushi, Farley's idol, exactly 15 years earlier. Both men died at 33. Both were Saturday Night Live alumni. Both died alone, surrounded by the excess that made them famous. The parallels weren't lost on anyone. But what haunts most is the audio. In the days before his death, Chris had called friends, slurred, incoherent voicemails, pleading, apologizing, as if he knew the end was near. The 911 call from his brother was short, frantic, unbelieving. Farley's body was so damaged by years of abuse that the coroner noted he looked 20 years older than his real age. His funeral drew massive crowds, fans, comics, legends, and yet the silence he left behind was deafening. He once said, "I want to live fast and die fat and happy." He got 2 out of 3, and the world lost one of the few people who could make anyone laugh, but couldn't make himself feel okay. Brittany Murphy was the kind of star that made people fall in love with movies again. She lit up Clueless, stole scenes in Girl, interrupted and stunned critics with her voice and vulnerability in 8 Mile. But just a few years after reaching that peak, something changed. Her appearance, her roles, her energy, the life in her eyes. And then, she was gone. On December 20th, 2009, at just 32 years old, Brittany Murphy collapsed in her Hollywood Hills bathroom. Paramedics arrived to find her unresponsive, her mother Sharon and husband Simon Monjack frantic and panicked. She was pronounced dead hours later at Cedars-Sinai. The official cause: pneumonia, anemia, and a lethal cocktail of prescription medications. But that's just the surface. What unraveled next would turn her death into one of Hollywood's most chilling mysteries. Let's start with the house. The same Hollywood Hills mansion where she died had a dark history. It once belonged to Britney Spears, who sold it because she believed it was haunted. Brittany Murphy reportedly hated the place, calling it cold, oppressive, and energy draining. Friends said she looked ill every time she returned to it. And then there was Simon Monjack, her husband, manager, gatekeeper. Much older, highly controlling, and by some accounts, deeply manipulative. He isolated her from her friends, allegedly took over her finances, and managed every part of her career. In the months before her death, Brittany lost weight rapidly, canceled projects, and appeared glassy-eyed and exhausted in public. Her final days were bizarre. She was reportedly sleeping in the same bed as her mother and husband, medicated heavily, and barely leaving the house. Despite being visibly ill for weeks, no one took her to a doctor. Then came the second twist. 5 months after Brittany's death, Simon Monjack was found dead. In the exact same house. In the exact same bathroom. Same cause, pneumonia and anemia. At first, it seemed like a tragic coincidence, until people started asking questions. Toxic mold was found in the house. Sharon Murphy, Brittany's mother, sued the builders, claiming environmental toxins killed her daughter and son-in-law. But then she dropped the suit. No explanation. No resolution. An independent toxicology report later found elevated levels of heavy metals in Brittany's hair, suggesting possible poisoning. But by then, the trail was cold. The LAPD had already closed the case, and no one ever reopened it. To this day, fans and investigators wonder, was it mold, medication, Munchausen by proxy, something darker? The only thing certain is this. A 32-year-old star died under bizarre, suspicious, and deeply neglected circumstances, in a house that may have been killing her for months. The last interview Brittany gave, she said, "I'm just a girl who wants to do great work and live a good life." Instead, she became another Hollywood ghost story, one with no ending. Phil Hartman was a master of calm. He didn't shout, he didn't chase attention, he just commanded it. Whether he was anchoring Weekend Update on SNL or voicing Troy McClure on The Simpsons, Phil's brilliance was in his stillness. He was the glue that held chaos together, and that's what made his death so disturbing, because it came from inside the home. By the late 90s, Hartman was a beloved icon of comedy, working steadily on the hit show News Radio and raising 2 children in Encino, California. He was known as quiet, low drama, and deeply private. But behind the walls of that serene house, a storm was building, and it had a name. Bryn. Bryn Amdahl Hartman was his wife, a former model and aspiring actress. She was beautiful, outgoing, and deeply insecure. Her relationship with Phil was volatile, loving one day, resentful the next. And underneath it all, there was addiction. Bryn had struggled for years with alcohol and drugs, cocaine in particular. She'd gone through rehab multiple times. She was jealous of Phil's fame, resentful of his distance, and increasingly mentally unstable. On May 27, 1998, the storm broke. The timeline is chilling. That night, Bryn had dinner with a friend and reportedly drank multiple cocktails. They talked about her marriage, about how Phil was pulling away. She returned home just after 1 a.m. Phil was already asleep. At around 2:30 a.m., Bryn entered the bedroom with a handgun, one of several the couple kept in the home. She approached the bed and fired 3 rounds. One hit his forehead, one hit his throat, one hit his chest. Phil Hartman died instantly, but it didn't end there. Bryn left the bedroom, got in the car, and drove to her friend Ron Douglas's house. She was hysterical, rambling, intoxicated. She confessed to what she'd done. At first, Ron didn't believe her. They returned to the house together. Ron called 911. Police arrived to find the children, ages 6 and 9, asleep in their rooms. They removed the kids and began trying to negotiate with Bryn. While they waited, she locked herself in the bedroom with Phil's body and took her own life with the same gun. The scene was brutal, final, unanswerable. Phil Hartman's death rocked the comedy world. His colleagues were devastated. The SNL tribute aired in silence. The Simpsons retired his characters. News radio filmed a final episode that felt more like a funeral than a show. In the aftermath, people asked why. Why didn't someone take the guns out of the house? Why didn't someone see it coming? Why did it end this way? But there was no answer, only silence. And 2 children, now orphans. Phil once said he preferred voice work because you could disappear into the performance. In the end, he disappeared into history, his life taken not by accident, but by the person who once loved him most. Brandon Lee was born into legacy. Son of Bruce Lee, one of the most iconic martial artists in history, Brandon had the look, the talent, and the intensity to carry the name forward. But what he couldn't escape was the shadow of his father's mysterious death, or the eerie feeling that something was following him. In 1993, Brandon landed his breakout role, Eric Draven in The Crow, a gothic, supernatural revenge film about a man brought back from the dead to avenge his murdered fiancée. The movie was dark, violent, beautiful, and cursed. From day one, the set was plagued by accidents. A carpenter was severely burned by an electrical explosion. A grip drove a screwdriver through his hand. A storm destroyed key sets, delaying production for weeks. A crew truck caught fire. A stuntman broke multiple ribs. A disgruntled worker crashed a car into the back lot. People joked about the curse of the crow. But no one was laughing by March 31st. That was the day Brandon Lee died, on camera. The scene was simple. Eric Draven walks into his apartment to find his girlfriend being attacked. A thug shoots him. A standard stunt. But the gun, a Prop .44 Magnum, was loaded with a real bullet. It wasn't supposed to be. Here's what happened. Earlier, the gun had been used in close-up shots with dummy cartridges. Those were real-looking bullets with no gunpowder, but the production team didn't clear them properly. One of the dummy rounds left a live primer, and a projectile lodged in the barrel. Later, for the shooting scene, the gun was loaded with blanks. No bullet, but full powder. When the gun was fired, the blank propelled the lodged bullet like a real round. It struck Brandon in the abdomen. He fell. The director yelled, "Cut!" But Brandon didn't move. At first, they thought he was acting. Then they saw the blood. He was rushed to the hospital. Emergency surgery lasted over 6 hours, but the damage was too severe. Brandon Lee died at 28 years old. He had 8 days left of filming. He was engaged. His career was about to explode, and now he was gone. The studio finished the film using stunt doubles and early CGI. When it was released, The Crow became a cult classic, a masterpiece soaked in grief. But the parallels with Bruce Lee's death decades earlier were impossible to ignore. Bruce died mysteriously while filming Game of Death, a film about a martial artist who dies on set and comes back to finish his work. Brandon died on set, playing a character who returns from the grave. They say lightning doesn't strike twice, but in the Lee family it did, and the sound still echoes. When Heath Ledger was cast as the Joker in The Dark Knight, fans rioted online. He was too handsome, too gentle, too wrong. Then the movie came out, and no one doubted him again. His portrayal of the Joker wasn't just acting, it was a possession. He brought something raw, terrifying, and entirely new to the screen. The smacking lips, the twitching eyes, the voice, a slurred purr mixed with menace. It was so immersive, even his co-stars were unsettled. But behind that performance, something was fracturing. In the months leading up to filming, Ledger isolated himself. He kept a Joker diary, filled with disturbing drawings, quotes, and thoughts that blurred fiction and reality. He told interviewers he was sleeping 2 hours a night and that he had trouble shutting his brain off. Friends say he was restless, chain-smoking, and drifting into himself. He suffered from chronic insomnia and was self-medicating with a cocktail of prescriptions: Ambien, Valium, Xanax, and painkillers. He was also reeling from a fresh breakup with actress Michelle Williams, the mother of his daughter. The separation hit him hard. He moved into a New York apartment, alone, and sank deeper into his work. Then came the dark night. He gave everything. But when the cameras stopped rolling, he couldn't stop the Joker. He told one reporter, "I couldn't stop laughing at things that weren't funny. I couldn't stop thinking about darkness." On January 22nd, 2008, Heath Ledger was found unconscious in his Soho apartment by his housekeeper and masseuse. They called Mary-Kate Olsen, his friend and rumored confidant, before they called 911. She sent security to the apartment. By the time paramedics arrived, Heath was dead. The autopsy revealed an accidental overdose, 6 prescription drugs in total. A fatal blend of sleeping pills, anti-anxiety meds, and painkillers. The perfect storm for a man unraveling silently. He was 28 years old. The media spun it as another lost star, but for those who knew him, it wasn't about fame or excess. It was about a man who got too deep, too fast. A man who couldn't come back from the role that changed cinema forever. Ledger's Joker posthumously won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. He never got to hold it. And maybe that's the legacy of his performance. Not just the chaos he captured, but the quiet it left behind. Robin Williams was joy in motion. A tornado of voices, energy, and empathy. He could make you laugh until you couldn't breathe, then turn around and break your heart with a whisper. He wasn't just a comedian, he was a mirror, a man who made the world feel better while quietly battling his own invisible war. And no one saw the ending coming. On August 11th, 2014, Robin Williams was found dead in his California home. A belt around his neck, a note left behind. The man who brought life to Mrs. Doubtfire, Aladdin, and Dead Poets Society had taken his own. The news was instant and devastating. But what most people didn't know, what even his closest friends didn't know, was that Robin Williams wasn't just depressed. He was dying. Months before his death, Williams had begun experiencing terrifying symptoms: memory loss, paranoia, anxiety, tremors, and severe insomnia. He would freeze mid-sentence, forget lines, panic in his own home. At one point, he reportedly clutched his wife and whispered, "I don't know what's happening to me." Doctors diagnosed him with Parkinson's disease, but they were wrong. It wasn't until the autopsy that the truth came out. Robin Williams had Lewy body dementia, a rare, aggressive neurological disorder that breaks the brain from the inside out. It mimics Parkinson's, causes hallucinations, attacks cognition, movement, and identity. There is no cure. His brain was described by one expert as a war zone. And Robin knew something was wrong. He just didn't know what, and neither did anyone else. He was put on antidepressants, anti-anxiety meds, sleep aids. Nothing worked. His world was shrinking. and the man who made the world laugh was vanishing in real time. His final months were a blur of confusion, despair, and desperation to hold on. He told friends he was losing himself, and one night he let go. The autopsy changed everything. His widow, Susan Schneider Williams, went public, fighting to raise awareness about Lewy body dementia. She called his death the most heartbreaking suicide I've ever seen, because it wasn't his fault. Robin Williams didn't die because he wanted to die. He died because his brain betrayed him. The laughter he gave, the hope he built, the legacy he left, it all still echoes. But behind the smiles was a man fighting an invisible monster with no name, until it was too late. And maybe that's the final tragedy of fame. You can give the world everything, and still suffer alone.
They lived under lights but died in shadows. What they gave us was joy, terror, brilliance. But what they left behind was silence. In the end, the stage goes dark, and all that's left is the tape. If this episode left a mark, you know what to do.